I would argue that Nero, by far, is the best introductory character to Devil May Cry in character action games in general. And I'm just going to gush for a minute, but Devil May Cry is one of my favorite video game franchises in existence. This is a series that, through gameplay, essentially lets me live out my favorite action movie power fantasies I used to have as a kid, reenacting scenes from movies like The Matrix or Shoot 'em Up. But this gameplay can be a little intimidating to newcomers, especially if you've never played a character action game before. And I would argue that DMC's combat mechanics are about as challenging melee combat can be in a 3D space. And while the combat isn't as complex as, let's say, a 2D Arc Systems fighting game, there's still a lot of content and gameplay mechanics to dive into here, especially when you look at more advanced characters like Dante. And Dante is my favorite character to play as in this series, but that's mainly because I'm a veteran and I love his complicated gameplay. But if you've never played a character action game before, Dante will make your head explode. Dante has 4 different combat styles, all of which radically change your gameplay and can be switched to on the fly. 4 different melee weapons, 5 if you include Balrog's alternate forms, 4 different gun weapons, and like 3 different meters on the screen. Like, look at this health bar. There's like 3 bars on the screen. It's like a non-stop slot machine going off in the background. And Nero is a lot less complicated to use than Dante. He's easy to use, but hard to master. The complicated aspects to Nero's gameplay mechanics are all based around mastering core gameplay mechanics to Devil May Cry in general. Mastering these mechanics is optional. The game doesn't force you to exact every swing from your sword or stay airborne forever, but the game will still incentivize you to learn these mechanics with a satisfying payoff. I'm going to analyze every core aspect of Nero's gameplay and break down how the game rewards you for mastering his gameplay mechanics. But before I get to how or why, I gotta get the shameless self-promotion out of the way. Please like, comment, and subscribe to The Gaming Grappler. The more this channel grows, the more time, effort, and dedication I can bring into delivering you guys content on a consistent and regular basis. And with that being said, it's time to get on with the show.
Who brought the marshmallows? Because I'm bringing the fire.
What better way to start breaking down Nero's gameplay than to talk about the Red Queen? And the Red Queen is everything I love about video games. It's a sword with a motorcycle engine duct taped to it, and it basically comes with its own gimmick and playstyle. Next to Nero's health bar, he has the X gauge, and the X gauge can be charged up 3 times by revving Nero's sword like a motorcycle during gameplay. And everything about the Red Queen seems like it was perfectly designed to teach new players the core mechanics of Devil May Cry's combat. And DMC's combat is a lot different than other character action games. Other games allow the player to simply mash out combos by dialing in different button combinations, but you can't really rely on this strategy in Devil May Cry. If you mash buttons, you'll get the same generic 4-hit combo over and over again. If you want to use new combos, you have to briefly pause the attack button at a specific point in the middle of an attack string. Basically, the game wants you to attack with more purpose and precision, and the Exceed system reinforces this mindset. Exceeding is basically revving up the sword during combat. Doing this is easy but slow. New players will immediately see the benefit to maxing out the X gauge. Maxing out the X gauge doesn't just give Nero a higher damage output, it radically changes the properties of his moveset. Just like a revved up motorcycle engine, a fully charged Red Queen will propel Nero forward with momentum and range. His attack strikes will deal more area of effect damage, and it's incredibly satisfying to use in combat. There's something about gliding forward and hearing that engine roar that's really satisfying during gameplay, and it's a really powerful system. However, standing there and just sitting in the corner and manually charging your sword during combat is slow and risky. Enter the X-Act system. If the player revs up the Red Queen perfectly in sync while they're striking, they'll get a free charge in the X gauge meter. They can even purchase a skill called the Max Act, which will charge all 3 bars in the X gauge for free if you charge your sword up with frame perfect timing. What this system does is incentivize the player to master the timing of their strikes and play with intentionality. The XX system rewards the player for mastering core mechanics of Devil May Cry's combat system. It even adds more depth to Nero's moveset. His base combos are easy to use, but challenging for even veteran players when you layer in the X-Act system on top of all of this. And I just want to gush here for a moment because the developers didn't have to do this, but the X-Act system isn't just exclusive to combat. If you ever notice Nero rev up his sword during gameplay, whether it's in a taunt or during a context-sensitive moment where he's stabbing a boss, you can charge up the X gauge, and I love that attention to detail. It's awesome. And now we got to talk about Nero's signature gameplay style, the Devilbringer or the Wire Snatch if you're playing Devil May Cry 5. And both of these things do pretty much the exact same thing. The Devilbringer or the Wire Snatch allows Nero to use a grapple hook to pull weaker enemies towards him or to bring Nero towards bigger and stronger enemies. It's a useful tool to keep your style meter up and to stay on the offense. But what it's really useful for is making it easier for new players to fight airborne. There are a lot of advantages to fighting in the air in Devil May Cry. If you launch an enemy in the sky, you'll isolate them from the group, and in short, it's a good tool for crowd control. But staying airborne for long periods of time, and long being 30 seconds or more in this case, is going to require more advanced gameplay. Jump canceling is a little more forgiving in Devil May Cry 5, but it will still offer a challenge for new players. Using the skill enemy step requires the player to jump off an enemy in mid-air. You can chain these together. The timing and spacing is going to make or break this technique. New players are likely to drop their combos or to make an error in judgment. But if you mess up a jump cancel, Nero can simply use his grapple hook to pull a new enemy or the same enemy back into the air. This is a failsafe for new players. It's a more forgiving system that encourages experimentation in gameplay. Oh, in an unrelated note, I also kind of love how Nero's dive kick in this game is a useful tool for learning how to jump cancel, kind of like how Beowulf's Killer Bee move was also useful for learning how to jump cancel.
You taking notes?
Alright, and now we got to talk about Devilbreakers. And Devilbreakers is a new combat system for Nero that was first started in Devil May Cry 5. And in that game, Nero loses his iconic Devilbringer at the start, and without the Devilbringer, he no longer has the ability to pull off his iconic wrestling moves and command grabs for free. While he does have Wire Snatch to replace the grappling hook, you're left pretty empty-handed there. For most Devil May Cry 5, Nero is stuck using Devilbreakers, and Devilbreakers are a consumable metal arm with different power-ups and abilities. Some of them give him back his iconic wrestling moves, but these abilities do a lot to diversify Nero's otherwise pretty vanilla gameplay. There's a Devilbreaker for everything. Some of them freeze time, some of them give him more ranged attacks, but my favorite Devil Arm and the objective best Devil Arm is Punchline. And Punchline lets you go rocket surfing onto enemies, and it's just perfect. It lets you live out that cutscene that was first started in Devil May Cry 3. And on top of that, it has one of the most powerful Shoryuken uppercuts in the game. This weapon is awesome, loaded up 3 times per clip in gameplay. The cost of using these powerful moves is pretty simple. Get hit while using a Devilbreaker, and it breaks. Use a Devilbreaker special move, and it breaks. And keep in mind that the player can't cycle to their next Devilbreaker at will. That's right, you have to use it or lose it to change your weapons. And what this does is incentivize the player to experiment with different weapons and playstyles. The fact that the player needs to use up their currently equipped Devilbreaker in order to switch to their next one means you need to learn new skills on the fly. This new Devilbreaker system is ingenious. It's basically the training wheels for learning more challenging characters like Dante, who can switch between like 1,000 different weapons and playstyles at a time. It's a little taste of what's to come in the future and helps you understand Devil May Cry's core gameplay philosophy of being stylish in combat scenarios. Table Hopper is a more advanced move in Nero's arsenal that the player will have to unlock in the game. And basically, Table Hopper allows Nero to dodge strikes with absolute style. It's a move that grants Nero more iframes and better positioning, and it also looks cool as hell. Like, this is pure anime, and that's important for a stylish action game. However, there is a risk and reward to using this mechanic. In order for this ability to activate, the player must use it at the absolute last second of an incoming strike from an enemy. If the player waits too long, then they're taking damage. And while it is a risky move, you have to keep in mind that the player usually has safer options like simply jumping out of the way. The rewards are definitely worth it. You will gain a lot of style points, both metaphorically and literally, and you'll gain a lot of Devil Trigger per successful use of the Table Hopper. And I know that's a bit of a spoiler, but this game is almost 5 years old at this point in time. And what this does is it teaches the player to dodge perfectly without the use of a tutorial. And what could be more fundamental than learning how to dodge properly in this game? Now, after all is said and done, is Nero as fun to play as Dante? I would argue no. Dante can do literally anything and everything, but I still appreciate what Nero represents for the series. He's your stepping stone for your journey for having fun in character action games. My very first Devil May Cry game was Devil May Cry 4, where Nero was the first character you played as, and his gameplay mechanics really showed me the ropes and helped me understand Devil May Cry as a series. After that game, I played Devil May Cry 3, and I checked out the rest of the series, and I started to learn more complicated characters like Dante and the nuances of his moveset. Nero's also no slouch in the advanced department. Again, I really love how all of Nero's simple gameplay mechanics have a more advanced layer on top of them for the player learning how to master them. Learning how to exceed or max act every strike of the game is difficult, but massively rewarding. I love the Devilbreaker system and how it teaches the player to try and experiment with new forms of gameplay. Wire Snatch, while it isn't as good as literally teleporting around the map like Dante, is still a useful tool for learning how to jump cancel and staying in the air. And I also love how Table Hopper is the training wheels for learning how to Royal Guard effectively. Again, this is just an awesome game. With that being said, this is the Gaming Grappler. Hopefully in the future I'll be posting more content on a more frequent basis. And I hope you enjoy the show and enjoy the rest of my channel. Have a good one, everybody.